Oh, by the mighty hammer of the gods, am I truly worthy? Well, that's all the proof you need right there. But the question remains, is the hammer telling me I am worthy to talk about the mighty Viking pirate Hyrudin, the 6th Fleet commander of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet? Or is it telling me that I am secretly a Norse god and I have to go reclaim my lost memories and powers? Probably the former. Probably the former. Let's be honest here. Even if I was like a lost Norse god, I'm thinking they kicked me out for a reason. You know, like Odin's looking down. Oh, this one didn't turn out the way we wanted. Let's just kick him down to earth and hopefully he never comes back, you know? Okay, so better late than never. I took a little bit of a hiatus on the discussion series, but we're back. We're back to talk about Hyrudin. We got Norse mythology. You know, I love studying different kinds of mythology. I've said it before a lot, but whenever we get to Nordic mythology, it's always complicated because I can't pronounce half of the damn words in there. You'd think at some point I would be like watching a YouTube series on how to pronounce certain words, but you know, I just kind of never did, so for right now, I'm just gonna have to shotgun it and hope we get lucky. We're probably not. There are words gonna be used in this video that have weird symbols and shit over the letters that I cannot make heads or tails of, but we'll get to that when we come to it. So first, let's start off with who Hyrudin is in the actual context of the series. Well, he is a giant. He's 81 years young. Keep in mind, giants can live upwards of over 300 years as opposed to humans. Even the human time frame on how long they can live, that's a little bit weird with One Piece, because you have characters like Dr. Kureha that can live, you know, well into their 140s, and they're perfectly fine. And the reason Oda got away with that is because he said, oh, well, Kureha is a superhuman. Alright, that's how she can live so much longer, and of course, she's a doctor, so she might be using various medicines to keep herself very vital. But then you get to other characters like Osuru, who is in her 70s, and looks older than Kureha, actually, and yet she's like half of her age. So does that mean, by that logic, that Osuru is going to live to 140, the same as Kureha? Because Kureha is like, she's like, apparently, yeah, if you're superhuman, you can live really long, but really the oldest person we've seen that's a regular human is Kureha. Everyone else, like Sengoku, Garp, Suru, they're all like in their 70s, and they look pretty old already, so I don't know how that goes. But when it comes to the giants, yeah, they can live upwards of 300. The oldest giants we've seen are Lord Mountbeard and Lord Fallbeard, that were older men well into like their 350s, and they were considered pretty elderly at that point there. But Hyrudin being only 81 years old, yeah, he's getting along. But something you can actually do with giants is, because they live 3 times as long as a human, just divide their current age by 3, and that'll give you a general idea, like biologically, how old they are relative to a human. So Hyrudin is 81, let's just make it simple and round that down to 80. 80 divided by 3 is like 26 point something, so yeah, he's roughly 26 years old in terms of like biologically, how strong he is. We've also seen him in his younger days over on Elbaf during Big Mom's flashback 63 years ago, when he was only 18, or closer to around 6 at that time, when he was training to become a great Elbafian warrior. So Elbaf is, of course, taking a lot of references from Norse mythology and the Nordic lands and Vikings and all that stuff. They take a lot, we don't know a lot about it in terms of the lore. We can make inferences based on Nordic mythology, but pretty much we could just go by what we see, is that that's a culture that takes pride in battle and going out to sea and, you know, fighting great fights, and then I'm sure when you die, you get the great honor of going to the One Piece equivalent of Valhalla. Dory and Bragi spoke about it in very vague terms, like, you know, it's the great battles that really make life worth living, and that's why Dory and Bragi were brawling it out on Little Garden for over 100 years, because they are true warriors, and they can't just surrender. They can't just be like, you know what, Bragi, I'm tired of fighting. Yeah, I'm tired of fighting too on this random island. You want to just go back home? He's like, yeah, let's do that. No, that would never be the rightful way to end a duel between warriors of Elbaf. So yeah, Hirudin grew up with that kind of mentality, and so he holds it quite steadfast to himself. He cares very deeply for the honor of the warrior and all that stuff. Whenever he sees somebody either dishonoring warriors or fighting dirty, it really rubs him the wrong way. That's not how he fights. And the way that Hirudin fights himself is a little bit unconventional. You know, we saw Dori wielding a giant sword, Bragi had his axe, we've seen other giants like Oimo and Kashi have giant clubs or whatever, and Hirudin has been shown to use like clubs and stuff from time to time, but when he was fighting in Cordia Coliseum, and from what it seems to be like his preferred method of weaponry, are these two giant gauntlets on his arms, kind of like how King Du fights, the 11th Division commander on the Whitebeard crew. You know, he had these two giant gauntlets, except Hirudin has a little bit of a modification where on his, I think it's his right arm actually, he has like this shield, but he doesn't hold it like a regular shield. He doesn't hold it like, you know, like this. He's like, you know, come at me. No, he has like this round shield that he keeps on his, like the top of his fist. And he uses it like a freaking piston, and just boom, and sends people flying that way. That's how he fought against Luffy during Cordia Coliseum, the brawl there. So yeah, little bit unconventional, but he's a giant, so you know, takes advantage of his size and the assistance of gravity. If he has like basically this giant just piston, and then he just like punches down, he can pretty much just pound a freaking hole like 50 feet deep right in the ground by doing that. So on top of being a great option for working in construction, I mean, if the whole pirate Viking thing doesn't work out, you know, Hirudin, we need you over here in the construction yard. You know, go to Water 7, help, you know, set up the cranes, build some galleons. I'm sure you'd be an asset there if nothing else. But aside from that, on the battlefield, especially when you're going up against a lot of people that are much smaller than you, you could just do that and just like boom, 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 and just punch holes in the battlefield and just leave giant craters in your wake. Now, when he was fighting against Mach-Vice, who was one of the executives of the Doflamingo family, a little bit of a problem there, because Mach-Vice's Ton fruit allowed him to increase his weight to insane degrees. He was literally a super weighted human. So he has this attack called the 10,000 ton Vice, which is just ridiculously heavy, and it was like, okay, Oda's like, let's stress test the capacity of a giant. You know, giants are pretty giant muscular dudes that can lift up probably mountains, you know, but let's see exactly how much they can do this, especially since you just have, I mean, Mach-Vice is a big dude, but compared to a giant, he's not much bigger than a regular human, but him jumping up in the air and doing these body slam Mexican luchador attacks, you know, and he's like weighing like, you know, 100 tons, 1,000 tons, 10,000 tons, like ridiculous, like millions of pounds here we're talking about. It was painful. It was painful to see that fight. Mach-Vice just pounding again into Hirudin, like hitting his legs. And in the anime, I mean, they have to like tone it down a little bit. In the manga, it was a little bit more grisly. In the anime, they just have these giant bruises appear all over Hirudin's body. But make no mistake, I mean, his bones are being pounded into dust every time that he slams down on one part of it. So, whereas Mach-Vice, normally he could take somebody out just by, you know, hitting them once, Hirudin's just, he has more surface area, you know, so it's gonna take a little bit longer. But Mach-Vice is perfectly happy, you know, with just slamming into him, slowly crippling his giant body until he just falls to the ground, and then he can deliver the coup de grace and just boom, probably right on the back of the head or something, and then that's how he would finish the fight. But Hirudin, there's one thing Mach-Vice didn't account for from Hirudin, and it's he's got the warrior spirit. Remember that scene when Dori and Bragi were seeing the Straw Hats out to sea at Little Garden? They were sailing away on the Going Merry, and that giant goldfish came out of nowhere, and they decided to use the mighty power, I forget what it was called. It was like the How Kikakoko or whatever. It was like the great warrior cannon or something of Elbaf. You know, it's when Dori and Bragi took their sword and their axe respectively, and they gave it all their power, and they just released this giant energy wave that just blew that damn goldfish into freaking ribbons, you know? I think it was Emperor's Sovereignty or Warrior's Sovereignty was the name of the attack, okay? Those are pretty devastating attacks, and we can talk about that later, whether or not it's like a special kind of, is it a martial art? I'm kind of confused, because it's like, from what Dori and Bragi did with that, you know, sovereignty attack, it's just like, they weren't using hockey. I don't think they were. They were just, you know, with the warrior spirit and shouting the name of the attack and just swinging their weapons really hard, they created a ki attack. I don't know. It's just, maybe it's you pray to the gods of Elbath, and it doesn't matter who you are, if you're a giant or if you're Big Mom. Well, Big Mom is close enough to a giant. The gods smile upon you and give you their blessings, and that translates to you can create a giant attack that can, like, rip through the land and leave giant holes in mountains and crap. I don't know how it exactly works. We could talk about that later. But those attacks were impressive, but they all required weapons. You know, Dory and Broggy had to have their sword and their axe. Big Mom had Napoleon. But Hyrule special screw-off Elbathian attack is Gungnir! And guess what? He didn't need an actual spear to use that thing, alright? All he needed was his fist. Alright? So, he's on the ground. He's bruised, his bones are broken and cracked, his muscles are probably ripped apart, he's in a massive amount of pain, and Machweiss launches himself all the way up as high as he can go. Considering Dressrosa was covered by the birdcage, that's probably not going to come into play later on. And he's like, 10,000 Weiss! And like a freaking meteorite just rocketing toward him. And he's like, I only got one shot left. The Warrior of Elbath. I don't know why I'm talking like Sylvester Stallone right now, but we're doing it, yeah. So he holds up his fist and he's like, oh yeah! Boom! And you can feel the strain. You know, the anime really abuses this, especially with Luffy's fights. Like when Luffy was fighting Caesar and he was using Grizzly Magnum, and he was like clashing with Caesar, but it was, in the manga, it was just boom, Caesar's done. But in the anime, it was like, well, let's struggle a little bit. Like, the gas is pushing him back, and the Shirokune is beginning to encroach on Luffy's arms. They did the same thing with Doflamingo, where King Kong Gun, that was a boom! That was a straight shot knocking Dofi down. In the anime, they drag it out a little more, and I understand why they have to do it. Not just to increase the length of the episode, pad it out a little bit, but also, you know, anime is a much different medium than manga. You know, in the anime, you got music, you got animation, you got voice talent. So it's like, Luffy can't just take out Dofi with one shot in like less than a second. No, they have to clash a little bit so the music can swell up in the background, like da 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 da, and then the freaking static power